With the failure of Final Fantasy XVI being more well known and understood by the community at large, it's really time to take a step back and really look at where things have been going for the past couple of years. How this was obvious to me and lots of other people, how nobody is surprised by this, how this has been a long time coming, and how, most importantly, YouTubers tried to deny it was existing until the bitter end. In fact, even now, they're trying to come out and say that, like, whoa, I finished the game, but only because I'm a streamer, and it's an 8 out of 10. It's not a great game, but, oh, I did finish it because I'm a streamer. So, essentially, what's happening is because of the brand name, because of the recognition, because of the legacy, a lot of YouTubers are coming out and saying the game is good for attention and clicks, right? They're doing everything they can to try and preserve the legacy for Square Enix, to try and get in their good graces, try to continue getting free stuff, try to continue like building a relationship with them, trying to continue to grift, right? Trying trying to make a business out of talking video games on the internet, right? That is what the vast majority of the audience are doing, right? We saw that a lot of this with Final Fantasy VII-R, right? In which a lot of people who don't play Final Fantasy, people like Angry Joe, people like Max Dude, people like that, tried coming out and saying that, like, oh man, this remake is very good, even if you've never played a Final Fantasy game before. Like, for a long-time fan like of the series like myself, of a long-time fan, because I'm a longtime fan of Final Fantasy VII, I was really happy with this game. I thought it was a masterpiece. It was like playing a Netflix series. It is an absolute masterpiece, right? That's what they tried to do. That's what they tried to pull. That's what they tried to establish. And it feels like for the first 3 months or so, like people actually kind of bought into it. It felt like there was a real hype cycle around Final Fantasy VII R, and it was something that I lamented. It was something I talked about. It was something I addressed. Right? It was something I was disappointed in because right from the get go, I was extremely underwhelmed by what Square Enix was seeing. Was showing off. Like I hated like the episodic story structure. I hated like the changes to the plot. I hated like the gameplay changes. Like Final Fantasy VII-R like felt like it was a game made by people who did not respect the original, and nobody wanted to admit it. Everyone wanted to make excuses for it. Everyone wanted to justify, like, oh man, things have changed now. Like, the industry has evolved. Like, we can't just remake Final Fantasy VII. We have to completely do this, make it a completely different game. Like, they tried damage controlling this, right? They tried pretending that this game looked good, that it looked exciting, and when it finally came out, that it was a Game of the Year contender. One of the best games I've ever played, right? What happens, right? Actual fans, after the hype period is over, start talking about all the problems, all of the issues, all of the damage control, and all everything that like the game critics tried to do, and it essentially collapsed among itself, right? Right? The sequels aren't going to do as well. The spin-offs aren't nobody's excited for. Um, and the new entries in the Final Fantasy brand are no longer getting hype, right? What happened with Final Fantasy 16 is an express response to what happened with Final Fantasy 7R. When people have realized that Square Enix has been mismanaging their brand for a long time now and are now starting to tune out. They're finally starting to uh, to balance and start playing other games, other RPGs from other Japanese developers, right? Final Fantasy is a dead IP in spite of the industry's desperate attempts to try and preserve it and try to pretend as if these games have any merit at all. And this, I think, is a really good example, the best example, I think, that I can think of in the modern era, how YouTubers, influencers, can't influence anybody at all. Like, all they can do is talk positively about a project in its first couple of weeks of release before, like, most people have a chance to get through it. But, like, the instant that actual fans start, like, finishing the game and start, like, talking about it on their forums and start talking about it independently and start having real conversations about, like, whether it's a good game or, like, whether this game did it better than that game or, like, whether they, like, made a good remake or not, right? Like, the instant it goes to like the actual fans, people who actually played this game for fun and not because it's a career, like the entire thing kind of collapses, right? Because when you look at Final Fantasy 16 objectively, when you look at how like they stripped away all the mechanics that people actually enjoy about Final Fantasy games, like you'll realize that Square Enix made a product that doesn't really appeal to anyone, right? This game is not good in the slightest. And in spite of like the damage control and like the reviews and like the agenda, right? Like you can't stop people from feeling that way, right? And when you really look at it critically, like the first few weeks of a game's release are really not all that indicative of how the game is going to be viewed like 5, 10, 20 years later. Like we've seen situations in which games that were critically panned at launch became like cult classics later on. We've seen situations in which like games that were hyped like were just completely forgotten like weeks after release. And a big reason why is because like if you're blatantly lying to your audience about what a product actually is, how good it actually is, like how competently made, like how engaging, how fun, how much time you're going to go back to it. Like it's going to get overshadowed by the products that people actually do play and actually do enjoy and actually do love. And it's a big reason why the YouTube influencing community cannot influence anyone because reality goes against their their entire existence, right? Like most people don't sit down and play through these massive games right away on stream to try to get through them as quickly as possible in order to try to get a review out, in order to try to like get some coverage in. Like they play games on their own time, right? YouTubers do not give an actual accurate representation of what playing through these games must be like for ordinary people. And as a result of that, their opinion cannot be taken seriously whatsoever. We need to stop paying attention to reviews, stop paying attention to game journalists, stop paying attention to people like DSP Gaming or Maximilian Dude or Donkey, right? And we need to just like acknowledge that these people are absolutely worthless and that gamers should simply come to their own conclusions about the quality of these products.